Tahana walked through the dry land with slow, steady steps, her heart heavy with pain she carried for many months. The early morning sun painted the sky with soft orange light. But even this beauty could not calm the storm inside her. She was an Apache woman, born in a proud tribe, raised with strength and honor. Yet in her heart lived a deep wound that never healed the loss of her younger brother, Nalin. His laughter once filled their home, and his energy once made everyone smile. But everything changed on the day of the cattle stampede near the Cowboy ranch. That day had torn her world apart. She believed one man was responsible for it, a cowboy named Luke Carson. Every story she heard in the town pointed toward him. People whispered that Luke was careless. Some said he pushed the herd too close to the trail where Nalin walked. Others claimed he ignored the danger signs. No one gave the full truth, but the town's whispers carried sharp edges, and those edges cut Tahana again and again. Each night she sat near her campfire and replayed those words in her mind until her anger grew strong enough to guide her footsteps. She spent weeks preparing for the journey. She sharpened her arrows, repaired her bowstring, and gathered dried food for the long trail. Her tribe elders warned her not to act based on half-truths, but her pain was too strong for calm advice. She was certain she knew what had happened. She was certain she knew who was at fault. The cowboy had taken her brother's life, and she believed it was her duty to face him. As she walked through the wilderness, Tahana kept her senses alert. The land around her was open and quiet. Tall grass swayed lightly in the wind, and small desert birds hopped between bushes. Tahana's dark eyes scanned the horizon again and again, searching for any sign of Luke Carson. She knew his ranch was far away, yet she felt him closer with each passing hour. Her mind traveled back to the day everything changed. It had been a warm afternoon. Nalin had left the village to collect herbs near the distant trails. He promised Tahana he would return before sunset, and she trusted him. He was skilled, careful, and strong. But the storm clouds had come suddenly, and the ranch cattle had been restless for days. Stories from the town reached her later, stories that said the cowboy had been trying to move his herd when thunder frightened the cattle, sending them stampeding across the land. Nalin had been caught helpless in the path of the rushing animals. By the time someone reached him, it was too late. Tahana's throat tightened at the memory. She wiped her eyes quickly, refusing to let tears weaken her steps. She believed anger had to be stronger than grief. She believed she had to find Luke, look him in the eyes, and demand answers. For 3 days she followed his tracks. She saw where his horse had walked, where his boots had pressed into the dirt, and where he had rested by fallen logs. She stayed hidden during the day, moving mainly at dawn and dusk. She didn't want anyone to know she was searching for him. Revenge, she thought, should come quietly. Yet she did not want to harm him without hearing his voice first. She wanted the truth from his mouth, even if she already believed she knew it. When she finally reached the outskirts of his land, she climbed a rocky hill and looked down at the valley. Below her, she saw Luke Carson for the first time. He was tying a broken fence, using thick rope and careful hands. His horse grazed nearby, calm and unbothered. Luke's hat shaded his face, but she could still see the seriousness in his movements. Nothing about him looked wild, reckless, or cruel. Nothing like the picture the town whispers had painted. Instead, he looked like a man who took care of his land with patience. She watched him lift a fallen branch and throw it aside. He didn't look like someone who ignored danger or caused harm without thinking. This confused her, and for a brief moment, she wondered if she might be wrong. But she quickly shook the thought away. Pain can make doubt feel like betrayal. She stayed hidden behind a large rock and watched him for hours. She saw him lead a horse to water. She saw him help an older traveler who had trouble fixing a wagon wheel. She watched him talk gently to a young boy who came to deliver mail. Luke even gave the child a small candy, and ruffled his hair. None of this matched the image of a man who caused her brother's death. But Tahana told herself that even a dangerous man could act kind when people were watching. As the sun lowered in the sky, she followed him again when he walked toward his barn. The tall wooden building stood quietly beside the hills. A light breeze carried the smell of hay and dust. Tahana's heart beat faster. She felt she was getting closer to the moment she had planned for months. She took a deep breath, forced her emotions into silence, and prepared herself. She gripped her bow tightly. Though she didn't plan to shoot, she only wanted him to know she was not afraid. She stepped deeper into the shadows, her moccasins silent on the ground. Her breath grew slow, steady, and cold, like the calm before a storm. Luke paused near the barn door and wiped sweat from his forehead. He seemed unaware of the danger watching him from the trees. Tahana whispered to herself, almost like a prayer. She told her brother's spirit that she was close. She told him she would speak for him. She told him she would find justice. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from how heavy her emotions had grown. Finally, she felt ready. But something unexpected happened. Just as she prepared to step forward and show herself, Luke suddenly stopped. His head lifted slightly, and he turned toward the trees as if he sensed someone there. Tahana froze. She was skilled at moving silently. Yet this cowboy had noticed something. His eyes scanned the shadows not in fear, but in awareness, like a man who respected the land enough to listen to it. Tahana sank deeper behind the tree, her breath caught. She had planned for many things, but she had not planned for the cowboy to be this alert. Luke stood still for a long moment, then slowly spoke toward the trees. "If someone's out there," he said softly, "I mean no harm." His voice surprised her. It was calm, warm, and steady, nothing like the cold voice she had imagined. Tahana's heart thumped hard. She wondered briefly if he was talking directly to her, or just to the wind. He continued, "If you need help or water, I have both. Help. Water." Safe words. Words that were the opposite of what she expected. Tahana felt something shift inside her, a small crack in the wall she had built. But she forced herself to stay focused. She hadn't come for kindness. She had come for truth and justice. She waited until he turned away again before stepping back into the forest, choosing not to face him yet. Not like this. Not with her emotions shaking inside her. She returned to her temporary camp that night and sat beside her fire. She watched the flames dance and thought about Luke's voice. She thought about how he moved, how he worked, how he helped others. She thought about how her anger didn't feel as strong as before. This confused her deeply. She wrapped her blanket around her shoulders and closed her eyes. But sleep would not come. Her thoughts fought like restless horses. She didn't understand why her heart felt different after seeing him. She didn't understand why her anger felt tired. She didn't understand why his calm voice stayed with her like an echo. But she made one decision that night, a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, she would step out of the shadows. Tomorrow, she would face him. Tomorrow, she would hear the truth from his own mouth. And whatever she learned, she would not run from it. She owed her brother that much. And she owed herself a chance to finally understand the man she had traveled so far to confront. The next morning arrived slowly, with soft golden light spreading across the open land. Tahana rose before the sun fully lifted, her heart steady but heavy with the weight of what she was about to do. All night she had struggled to sleep, thinking about the cowboy's calm voice and the way he seemed aware of someone watching him. It made her feel uneasy. Not because of fear, but because something about him did not match the dark picture she had created in her mind. Still, she reminded herself again and again why she had come. She needed the truth. She needed answers for her brother. And she needed to face Luke Carson directly. She packed her small camp quickly, tying her water pouch to her belt and checking her bow one last time. She did not plan to use it, but it gave her courage. When she looked at the long stretch of land between her and Luke's ranch, She took a deep breath, whispered her brother's name, and began walking. The ground was cool under her feet, and the wind brushed lightly against her hair as if trying to calm her. But nothing eased the tightness in her chest. With every step she took, memories returned her brother's smile, the elders trying to comfort her, the stories she heard in town accusing the cowboy. She allowed the memories to guide her, but she also tried to keep her mind open. She knew that once she stood in front of Luke, everything she believed might change, or it might become stronger. As she neared the ranch, she noticed Luke was already awake. He was cleaning his saddle, running his hands gently across the worn leather. His horse stood beside him, swishing its tail and stamping the ground lightly. Tahana watched silently from behind a cluster of rocks, observing his calm movements. He didn't look like a man with a guilty heart. He didn't look like someone hiding a dark truth. He looked like someone starting his day the same way he had for years, quietly, peacefully, and with purpose. She stepped forward slowly, her eyes fixed on him. Her heart pounded harder with every step. She expected her legs to feel weak, but they didn't. Instead, they carried her forward, like they knew this moment had been waiting for her. Luke suddenly paused and lifted his head again, just like he had the evening before. This time, she didn't hide. He turned and saw her standing a short distance away, her bow at her side and her eyes sharp but steady. Luke did not reach for his gun, which hung loosely at his hip. Instead, he raised both hands slowly to show he meant no harm. "I thought someone was out there yesterday," he said in a calm voice. Tahana did not move closer. She kept her distance and replied firmly, "I am here for answers." Luke studied her for a long moment. "What kind of answers?" She took a deep breath. "My brother died near your land. The cattle stampede. People said you were the cause." The words felt heavy as they left her mouth, but she spoke them clearly. She wanted him to hear her pain. Luke lowered his hands slowly and nodded with sadness in his eyes. "I heard about the young man. I didn't know he was your brother." Tahana tightened her grip on her bow. "They told me you pushed your herd too close to the trail. They said you ignored signs of danger." Luke stepped back slightly and leaned against the fence, letting out a slow breath. He did not look angry. He looked tired, like someone who had carried a burden quietly for too long. "I never ignored anything," he said quietly. A storm rolled in. The thunder scared the cattle. I tried to control them, but they scattered. I rode as hard as I could to stop the herd, but... His voice grew soft. "I reached your brother too late. I held the reins so tight that my hands bled trying to turn the cattle." Tahana felt her heart twist. She did not expect the cowboy to speak with so much honesty, or with sadness, that almost matched her own. She stepped one small step closer. "Why didn't you come to my tribe and explain?" Luke looked down at the dirt beneath his boots. "I wanted to. I even saddled my horse twice for the ride. But your tribe had no reason to trust a cowboy from town. I feared they would think my words were excuses, and I didn't want to cause more pain." He looked up, his eyes sincere. "But I never ran from the truth." A soft wind moved between them, carrying dust across the open ground. Tahana studied his face carefully, searching for any sign of dishonesty, but she found none. His voice had no tremble. His eyes did not shift. He spoke like a man who had replayed the moment 100 times in his own mind. Still, she needed more than words. "Show me," she said. "Show me where it happened." Luke nodded immediately, like he had been waiting for that request. He saddled his horse while she followed on foot. They traveled across the open land, moving through tall grass and dry soil until they reached the place where the stampede had occurred. Tahana felt her breath catch as she recognized the area. She had visited this spot before, soon after losing her brother, but that day everything had been blurred by pain. Luke dismounted and pointed toward the trail. "The cattle ran from that direction," he said. "I rode along this ridge trying to stop them, He walked along the path slowly, showing her hoof marks still faintly visible in the dirt. Even months later, the earth carried the memory of the chaos. Tahana followed him quietly, her eyes tracing his gestures. He stopped, near a group of scattered rocks, and kneeled. "I found your brother here," he said softly. "He was already hurt. I tried to carry him to safety, but the herd was still too wild." He swallowed hard, as if the memory hurt him, too. "I stayed with him until the storm passed." Tahana's knees felt weak, and she lowered herself slowly to the ground. Her hand touched the soil gently, tears forming in her eyes. For the first time, she imagined her brother not alone, but someone trying to help him. Someone trying to save him. Luke stood back respectfully, giving her space. He did not speak until she finally rose again. "You risked yourself," she said quietly. "I did what any man should do," he replied. "I'm deeply sorry for your loss." Those words hit her like a wave. The anger she had carried for months felt suddenly thin, weak, almost hollow. She realized she had been holding on to pain so tightly that she had shaped it into a target, a face she could blame. But now, standing beside the man she once thought responsible, everything felt different. She didn't know how to explain it, but something inside her had shifted. Luke noticed the change in her expression. "If my words aren't enough," he said gently, "I can show you more." I tried to help the townsfolk understand what happened. Some believed me, some didn't. Tahana shook her head slowly. "Your truth, I can hear it now." Luke looked relieved. But he didn't move closer. He respected her space, giving her time to process the storm inside her heart. As they began walking back, the silence between them felt different, no longer heavy with anger, but filled with unspoken questions. Tahana felt her heart pulling in two directions. Part of her still carried grief, but another part felt something new growing, something unexpected, something she didn't understand yet. Luke walked beside her, calm and quiet. He did not demand forgiveness. He did not ask for anything. He simply walked, matching her pace, as if he knew she needed time. When they reached the edge of his land, she stopped. "I don't know what I feel right now," she admitted softly. Luke nodded. "You don't have to decide anything today." "Live. You don't have to decide anything." "Luke." His gentle tone made her look at him more closely. For the first time, she noticed the kindness in his eyes, the patience in his voice, and the strength in his quiet presence. The anger she once felt toward him was fading like smoke in the wind. Tahana turned away to return to her camp. But before she left, she glanced back at him. Luke stood there, watching respectfully, not pushing, not demanding, simply waiting. And in that moment, something warm fluttered in her heart. She came to confront him. But now, she was no longer sure that revenge had a place in her future. Tahana woke the next morning feeling different from every day before. The anger she once carried like a burning coal no longer felt hot. Instead, it felt like ashes still there, still painful, but no longer sharp enough to guide her. She sat beside her small fire and stared at the smoke, rising gently into the air. For months, she had believed she knew the truth. She believed Luke Carson was the man she needed to confront, the man responsible for her brother's death. But after seeing the place where everything happened and hearing his words, her heart felt confused, tangled between pain and something unexpected. She tried to remind herself why she had come. She whispered her brother's name, hoping it would strengthen her resolve. But all she could think of was Luke's sincerity, the sadness in his voice when he spoke about trying to save Nalin, and the quiet respect he showed her when she cried silently at the sight of the stampede. She didn't want to accept it, but her heart had already begun to soften. As the sun rose higher, she knew she had to see him again, not for anger, not for revenge, but for truth, real truth. She wanted to see if the honesty she saw in his eyes the day before was real, or if she had imagined it in her tired state. She gathered her things, put out the fire, and walked toward the ranch with slow, thoughtful steps. The wind felt gentle against her skin, as if encouraging her forward. The land around her felt different now, less hostile, more open. For the first time in months, she walked toward the cowboy, not with rage, but with curiosity. Curiosity about who he truly was. When she reached the edge of his property, she saw Luke repairing the roof of his barn. He moved carefully, hammering nails with steady hands. He looked peaceful, unaware that she was watching him. She stood there for a moment, unsure if she should call out or wait until he noticed her. Before she could decide, he looked down and saw her. Surprise flashed across his face, but it quickly softened into a gentle smile. He climbed down the ladder slowly and wiped his hands on a cloth. "You came back," he said in a calm, warm voice. Tahana nodded. "I needed to understand more." "I'm glad," he replied, and there was something sincere in the way he said it. Something that made her chest feel warm. "I didn't want yesterday to be the last time we spoke." She stepped closer. "I want to see the trail again, and I want you to explain everything you saw that day." Luke agreed right away. He saddled his horse again but walked beside her instead of riding. Together they traveled to the same place. But this time, Tahana saw more than the land. She saw the path the cattle took, the rocks her brother might have stumbled on, the marks in the dirt where Luke tried to stop the herd. She saw the truth with clearer eyes. Luke pointed to a ridge. "I rode from there. When the thunder struck, the cattle panicked. They rushed forward faster than I could control." He stopped and lowered his gaze. "I've never been able to forget that sound. The thunder, the stampede, and your brother calling for help." Tahana felt her breath catch. He called out, "I'm Manavor." And divine lined, "Anna, I'm Manavor." Luke nodded slowly. He tried to run, but the ground was slippery from the rain. "I rode down as fast as I could. When I reached him, the herd was still too wild. I grabbed him and shielded him as best as I could." Tahana closed her eyes tightly. The image hurt her heart, but it also healed something inside her. For so long she had imagined her brother alone, scared, with no one trying to help him. But hearing Luke say he had tried, hearing that someone was there with Nalin, made tears slip silently down her cheeks. "I didn't know," she whispered. Luke stepped back respectfully again, giving her space. "I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want people to think I was trying to win sympathy. I knew your tribe deserved the truth, but I didn't know how to bring it to you without causing more hurt. So I stayed quiet, even though it weighed on me every day." Tahana looked at him through her tears. "You should have told me." He nodded. "Yes, I should have." There was silence between them, but it wasn't tense. It was soft and filled with understanding. Tahana walked around slowly, touching the ground where her brother had fallen. She kneeled again, running her hand through the dirt as if she could feel his spirit there. She felt Luke standing behind her, not close enough to intrude, but close enough that she sensed his presence. After a long moment, she rose and turned toward the cowboy. "I thought you were the enemy," she said softly. "I thought you were the reason I lost him." Luke swallowed. "I understand why you felt that. But now," she continued, "I think I blamed you because I needed someone to hold responsible. I didn't want to believe it was nature or chance, because that makes the pain heavier. I would not root her. I would not root her to say, I would not root her. We can support. I would not root her. I would not root her. I would not root her." Luke didn't speak at first. Then, after a moment, he said, "Sometimes the world hurts us without reason. It's unfair. But I promise you, if I could have saved him, I would have." His voice carried no doubt, no hesitation. just truth. Tahana felt her heart soften even more. Something inside her shifted completely, and she knew the anger she once held had finally dissolved. It didn't disappear instantly, but it lost its strength. What took its place was a quiet respect for the man who stood in front of her. She looked up at him carefully. Why? Why did you help him? You didn't even know him. Luke blinked, almost surprised by the question. Because he was a human being. Because he needed help. Because it was the right thing to do. He paused, then added softly, and because I couldn't let him face that moment alone. Those words broke something open inside her. She didn't expect such sincerity from a cowboy she once thought of as careless. She didn't expect him to carry her brother's memory as deeply as she did. And she never expected her heart to respond the way it did, to warm, to soften, to open. They walked back slowly, neither speaking for a while. The quiet felt peaceful. Birds flew overhead, and the grass moved gently in the wind. As they approached the ranch, Luke pointed to a fallen tree and asked if she wanted to rest. She agreed, and they sat down side by side, though still, with a respectful distance. After a few minutes, Luke asked, "Do you want water?" She nodded, and he handed her his canteen. When she took it, their fingers brushed lightly. It was a small touch. Accidental. But it sent a warm feeling through both of them. Both quickly looked away, pretending nothing happened, but the moment lingered quietly in their hearts. Tahana drank slowly, thinking about everything that had happened. "I came here to find a man to blame," she said softly. "But instead, I found someone who tried to save what I lost." Luke's eyes softened at her words. "I wish I could have done more." "You did more than I expected," she whispered. They shared a long look, and something unspoken passed between them. A connection neither had intended, but both felt strongly. It was not love, not yet, but something gentle and growing. Something warm. Tahana stood up slowly. "I will return to my tribe soon. They need to know the truth." Luke nodded. "Whatever you decide, I hope peace comes to you." She looked at him again, her heart full of mixed emotions. "I will come back tomorrow," she said unexpectedly. "There is more we need to talk about." Luke's eyes brightened slightly, though he tried to hide it. "I'll be here." Tahana walked away, her steps slow with thought. The wind carried her hair behind her, and the land felt different under her feet, lighter, softer, almost hopeful. She had come seeking truth. She had found it. But she had found something else too, something she hadn't planned for, something her heart could no longer ignore. And though she didn't fully understand it yet, she knew one thing for certain. Her story with Luke Carson was far from over. Tahana returned to her tribe that evening with a heart full of questions she had never expected to feel. The sky above her was turning purple as the sun dipped behind the mountains, and the air carried the cool breath of nightfall. She walked slowly, thinking about every word Luke had spoken and every moment they had shared that day. She tried to remind herself that she had come seeking justice, not friendship, but her heart argued with her mind again and again, showing her the truth she had already accepted. The cowboy was not her enemy. When she reached the village, the elders noticed her quietness. They asked if she had found what she was looking for. Tahana simply nodded and said she still needed time to understand everything. She did not mention Luke. She did not speak of his honesty or the way her heart had softened. She knew she needed to sort through her feelings before anyone else could understand them. That night, she lay awake, staring at the stars. The desert sky was clear, and the stars shone brightly, like tiny fires in the sky. She remembered how Luke had stood beside her at the stampede site, giving her space, yet giving her comfort without even touching her. She remembered the small brush of their fingers when she took the canteen, a moment so simple yet so warm that she felt it even now. She turned on her blanket and closed her eyes, trying to sleep, but her heart kept whispering the same thought. She needed to see him again. not to ask more questions, not to find more truth, but simply because she wanted to be near him. When dawn arrived, she rose early. She washed her face in the river, braided her hair, and prepared herself with calm determination. She did not know what this new path would lead to, but she felt no fear. Something about Luke's presence felt steady, safe, and honest. She knew she had to follow that feeling. She reached his ranch just as he stepped out of his house. He paused when he saw her, and his face softened into a warm, genuine smile that she felt deep in her chest. "You came," he said quietly, as if he wasn't sure she would return. "I said I would," she replied. They stood facing each other for a long moment, the morning light softening the air around them. Neither spoke, but much was said in the silence. The weight of their past fear and anger had faded, replaced by something new, something gentle and uncertain. Luke motioned toward the open field. "Walk with me?" he asked. Tahana nodded. They walked side by side across the ranch, their steps slow and unhurried. The grass brushed against their legs, and the distant sound of horses carried on the wind. Every now and then they glanced at each other, then quickly looked away with small, shy smiles neither could hide. After a while, Luke spoke. "I've thought a lot about your brother. I've never forgotten his face. I didn't know his name until yesterday, but I remember him clearly. He was brave." Tahana felt her chest tighten. "He always had a strong heart," she said softly. "He believed every person had goodness inside them." 9. Ah. Luke nodded. He was right. They continued walking until they reached the river that cut through the lower end of his land. The water moved gently, sparkling in the sunlight. Luke sat on a fallen log, and Tahana sat beside him. They were close, but still a careful distance apart, still figuring out what their hearts were learning. After a long silence, Luke turned to her. "What will you tell your tribe?" She looked at him thoughtfully. "The truth," she said. "That you tried to save him. That the storm caused the stampede. That you carry the weight of that day." 2. Luke exhaled, relief washing through him. "Thank you. But," she added gently, "there is something else. I have not decided." He waited, patient and attentive. Tahana lowered her eyes. "I do not know how they will feel about me returning here. Again." Luke's breath caught slightly, though he tried to hide it. "Do you want to return?" he asked softly. She lifted her eyes to his, and for the first time, she did not hide her emotions. The word hung in the air between them, simple yet powerful. Luke's heartbeat quickened, and a warmth spread through his chest. He didn't speak right away, afraid he might ruin the delicate moment. But his eyes spoke clearly. They glowed with gratitude, with quiet hope, with feelings he had tried to ignore but could no longer hide. Tahana looked away shyly. She wasn't used to this kind of openness. She wasn't used to trusting someone outside her tribe, especially someone she had once seen as responsible for her pain. Yet the more time she spent with Luke, the more she felt drawn to him in ways she could not explain. Luke finally spoke. "If you return..." She smiled gently. "I know." They sat together by the river for a long time, talking about simple things, his horses, her family, the mountains far in the distance. Every word felt easy, natural, as if they had known each other far longer than a few days. There was a softness in the air around them, a growing connection that neither of them fully understood, but both felt deeply. As the sun rose higher, Tahana knew she had to return to her tribe, but she didn't want to leave. When she stood to go, Luke rose with her. They faced each other once more. This time, closer than before. She spoke first. "I will come again. I'll be waiting," he said, his voice warm and steady. She hesitated for a moment, then did something she had not planned. She reached out and touched his arm gently. It was a small gesture, But her touch was filled with gratitude, trust, and something else. Something her heart had quietly grown without warning. Luke felt his breath catch as her fingers touched his skin. He didn't move, afraid the moment would break. When she slowly pulled her hand back, he looked into her eyes with a softness he could no longer hide. Tahana gave him a shy smile, then turned and walked away. Luke watched her until she disappeared over the hill, his heart filled with a warmth he had not felt in years. Over the next days, Tahana returned again and again. Sometimes she came to talk, sometimes just to sit quietly nearby. Every visit brought them closer. They learned each other's stories, hopes, worries, and memories. Their laughter grew easier, their conversations deeper. They even began to work together. She helped him gather firewood, and he taught her how to calm a frightened horse. Her tribe eventually noticed the change in her. They saw the peace in her eyes, the softness in her smile. When she told them the truth about Luke, some were surprised, some grateful, and some cautious. But they trusted Tahana's heart, and they trusted her judgment. As the days passed, Tahana and Luke's bond grew into something strong and steady. They didn't speak the word love, not yet. But their actions whispered it quietly every time Luke set aside water for her arrival. Every time Tahana left small gifts of herbs or hand-carved items at his door. Every time their eyes met with warmth neither could hide. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with gold and red, they stood together near the river where everything had begun. Luke turned to her, his voice quiet but full of resolve. "I never thought someone would come into my life in a way I didn't expect," he said. "I never thought someone would understand my heart the way you do." Tahana felt her breath tremble slightly. "I came here because of pain," she whispered, "but I stayed because of you." Luke stepped closer, slowly, giving her time. "I'm glad you did." Their hands brushed again. This time, intentionally. Slowly, gently, their fingers intertwined. They both felt the shift, the moment their hearts finally accepted what they had been feeling all along. Tahana looked up at him, her eyes warm and full of quiet affection. "I never thought I would find peace here," she said softly. Luke smiled. "You didn't find peace," he whispered. "You brought it with you." Not. They stood together, the river flowing softly beside them, and the sky glowing above. Two people who had once been enemies, now bound by something stronger than anger, stronger than grief, stronger than the past. Tahana had come seeking revenge, but instead, she found understanding. She found truth, and in the heart she once saw as the enemy, she found love.